welcome, Tom. We're extremely thrilled to have you here today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Everybody awake? It's Friday. I saw some hands go up. Who hasn't been to Ocean Park? Don't be embarrassed. All right, I got some work to do. I'm not even there anymore, but I am there. I mean, my heart's there, my soul's there. When Juliet had approached me and asked me if I would speak, I said, the thing that I'd like to speak about is what I think made Ocean Park successful, what allowed us to grow and be who we are, and continue forward. And anybody here from Disney today? Nobody? I'm sorry? Ex-Disney, all right. Well, anyway, I'm not here to bash Disney. I mean, Disney's the greatest thing that ever happened to us. It gave us the ability to do what we did. And it allowed us the opportunity of going to government saying, can we get a little bit of money? Loan, of course, we had to pay it all back. But can we get a little bit of money to do something really amazing? And the government was absolutely in favor of it. The market reacted. And I want to take you through that journey, if I can, just what we did. And I think the leadership philosophies, the management practices, and the things that I believe made Ocean Park successful and have set it up for the next wave of where it's heading. And for those who have been, thank you. Please keep going. For those who haven't been, hopefully this will inspire you to pop over there at some point in time and just see what's happening. But Ocean Park is on a journey. It's moving from a very simple, local amusement park to a resort, and it's moving very quickly in that direction. And we put it on that path it was finished in 2012 in terms of the master redevelopment plan, but it's continuing its journey. And again, we've got the South Island line that runs to the park today. We've got a hotel going up right at the front of the park, a Marriott hotel. On the backside of the park, a world-class water park, another hotel going up there. So there's a lot happening. And it's pretty exciting for me to look back and realize what we put in place. So let me take you on this journey. You're going to see Themed Advisors down here. That's a company I set up in order to be able to continue advising Ocean Park. I was lucky enough for the board to ask me to continue advising them for at least another year. And it's been really great for me to stay connected to the park and just give advice and give input where it's wanted and desired and not get in the way as well of what needs to continue to grow. But in the midst of all that, Alan Zeman, if anyone knows Alan or knows of Lan Kwai Fong, he had approached me and asked if I'd be willing to join him in Lan Kwai Fong as a partner specifically to open up a new company called Lan Kwai Fong Attractions. And as you heard Juliet refer to, I've been very fortunate to be able to start that up with Alan. And there's lots of opportunity out there. If you know the China market, theme parks in China alone, of the 100% of the parks, of some 2,800 parks, right now, 70% of them are failing. 20% are breaking even, and only 10% are making money. So there's real opportunity there in terms of what can be done to make those parks better, to fix things that are simple. And I often say the software drives the hardware. What we're seeing in China at the moment is unbelievable hardware investment. We're not seeing the investment in the software, the know-how, the capability of delivering the experience. It's about buying the hardware. They think, turn it on, it'll just run. It'll just be okay. But we all know it needs attention. It needs the ability to be fixed and adjusted, whatever that hardware is. And so again, we're giving them some advice, and we have a lot of opportunity there as well as far as that goes. But let me take you on the Ocean Park journey, and I'll be happy to answer any questions later as well. I got to start by asking you something. You've been putting your hands up about going to Ocean Park, but let me ask you this. How many of you desire success? Most hands are going up. That's good. There's no right or wrong answer here, by the way. I'm going to take you on the journey we went on. I got to say as well, I did the best I could to take a 2-hour presentation and condense it to 20 minutes. I'll go pretty quickly here, but again, I'm happy to revisit any points if they do come up. But I asked this question back in 2004 of my staff, my direct report staff. How many of you desire success? Because I knew we were embarking on a journey that was going to require a real commitment to change and a real commitment to a whole different outlook on where this company was going to go. And so we set a vision statement based on that. Very aspirational. I highlight this word for a reason. I'm going to come back and revisit it at the end of the presentation. But basically, we aspire to be a world leader in doing all the things we do. Ultimately, the last 4 words are critical here: connecting people to nature. We have an incredible opportunity at Ocean Park to connect people who may never otherwise see an animal to nature. let them see an animal, maybe not in their perfectly natural habitat, but in a habitat that mimics the natural environment, gives them a chance to understand more about that animal. It's been a great platform for us for education and for conservation. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But we started with a very simple process. I don't know how many of you have read Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's been a real Bible for me through my career. I got introduced to Stephen Covey back in the 80s. He came to our place of employment. I happened to work at Knott's Berry Farm in California back at that time. And Stephen came in and actually presented his 7 habits to us. And I just thought, wow, it wasn't rocket science. It wasn't anything, it wasn't a revelation. He had packaged all these great things that we all had absolute common knowledge of, and he put them in such a way that it made sense. And that's what I liked about it. But the habit I've used year after year, time after time, market after market that I've gone to is seek first to understand, then be understood. And I've found that it works extremely well, no matter what you do. In leadership and any practice, seek first to understand and then be understood. And that was what we did. I needed to understand the market at Ocean Park very first and foremost. So when we started on this journey of redefining the park, let's understand where we are, what we need to do, what the market wants, and then we can go from there. So again, understand was a key part of it. So obviously you've seen some of this before. We've got 2 ears. We got to use them better than we do. And that slide in the upper left-hand corner, I don't know if any of you are guilty of this. I certainly can say I am at times. I'm thinking of my response as opposed to listening sometimes to the question. So again, it's about really putting forth the listening capabilities. That's what we did. And that's what allowed us to drive the park to the next level of excellence that we did. But it was this understand, seek first, understand, then be understood that led us that way. The next thing was I wanted to look at our values. What are our core values? What are our differential values? What is it that separates us from Disney? And again, we had some dialogue at the board level about, do we want to introduce IP and do we want to introduce simulators and 4D, 5D, 6D sort of things? And I had said to them, you know, we can, but they do it so well. They've got a rich array of IP, and they're incredibly good at executing these environments, these fabricated environments. We've got nature. Why don't we let them be in that fantasy world? We'll be in the real world. And so again, we jokingly said, Disney's got the animated mouse, we got the real mouse. You want to come see a real rodent, come to Ocean Park, we've got them. But the point was we needed to focus on what our core values were and what our differential values were. And so with that, our core values at Ocean Park were education and conservation. They're key to what we do, everything. They're the founding principles of the park, actually. The next thing was our fun. You know, how many of you have fun in your mission statements? I'm talking to an interesting group here because you probably all do, but a lot of companies don't. When you say fun in your core values, they go, oh, well, we're working here. This isn't about fun. We obviously feel, you know, certainly in a theme park, if you can't have fun there, you're not going to have fun anywhere. But it's got to dominate our thinking and our approach to our business because we're creating fun. We're creating family memories for the future. The next thing was obviously service. Service to our animals, service to our guests, service to our employees, our vendors, our community, all very important for us. The next thing was obviously safety. You cannot run an unsafe park, an unsafe community gathering place. It won't last very long. So safety is absolutely at the top of our priorities. And then of course, respect for people and animals. We have an unbelievably heavy responsibility when you think that we take an animal from birth or from some point of its life cycle, and we're basically the caretaker for that animal for life. We don't just have it for a week or 2 weeks, it's for life. And so our commitments are huge in terms of our respect for them, as well as the people that work and visit us. So those are all our core values. The next thing I wanted to do was look at measuring. We got to measure what we're doing as a park. Now, many of you may not know about the science behind theme parks, but everything we do there is measured. Everything. When people enter, when they leave, how long they stay, when they eat, when they don't eat, how long they wait in line, how long a transaction takes, how do you speed up these things? All these things are measured and looked at. The metrics are unbelievable in a theme park, and I wanted to make sure we were looking at the metrics in Ocean Park. We weren't before my arrival. And so again, I'm just giving you some representative images there of just measuring, nothing really applicable to Ocean Park besides probably the right-hand photo, which is wait time on attractions. Everybody wants the shortest wait possible. And so again, one of the goals was when I got to the park, we offered enough entertainment units or attractions to give a full park. If our park was full, and every guest was evenly distributed through the park, you would have waited an hour and 15 minutes for every single attraction under peak hours. That's horrible. That's not where you want to be. And so we set a goal of offering 2 attractions per guest per hour during peak hours. And that helped set the goal for how we made the investments and what we put into the park to give that new metric a chance to succeed. It is a mathematical model. I can't force every guest to spread evenly through the park. They all want to ride the cable car. They all want to ride certain things. But what it does is it gives you so many other options. And now that we've introduced Wi-Fi through the park and we have the ability of push communicating to our guests and also looking at the movement of guests, we can then help guide them through information that gets them to other areas that maybe aren't busy. And so that's all part of our process of just taking technology and applying it in the park. But it all starts with measuring. So we had to measure the basics of what we were trying to deliver to our guests and then apply it within the park. And it became a very core principle of what we were trying to do. The next thing was plan. And again, I know we all know this, but sometimes people just fail to plan. You don't plan to fail, right? So the key thing here was you have to anticipate. And one of the things I found with our team is we weren't anticipating, we were reacting. So we needed to anticipate what might happen, what's going to happen, and how do we in fact prepare for that eventuality. And so it helped guide a lot of what we were doing. Then you had to communicate. Everything we did had to be communicated at every level within the company, because we're a big company. We're like a city. Every discipline you can imagine in a city is represented in our theme park. Every level of professionalism and education is represented in the park. So we had to make sure we're reaching everybody with what we're doing. And the next thing was execute. At the end of the day, executing is the real key. You can do all the planning you want, you can do all the anticipating and all the communicating, but you got to execute at the end of the day. And so that became key to us. So we've referred to this as ACE. We have to ace our planning. So we're going to anticipate, communicate, and execute at all times and make sure that it's done on the broadest possible level. Next thing was making sure we're relevant. Was Ocean Park relevant to its market? And one of the things that's guided me over the years is I wanted to make sure we're culturally relevant to the markets we serve. When I got to Ocean Park, we had a very heavy Western food influence. And I was actually surprised. I would have assumed we would have had more Chinese food, we would have had more kind of regional ethnic foods than it would have been Western. And so we made a big effort. So we had the burgers and donuts and things at the park. And so we started pulling that back. We still offer it. There's still people who want that. Pizza and what have you, but we pulled that back to be less of a dominant offering. We put more local flavors into play. Something as simple as we called it Mr. Squid. We did fried squid legs. I've never seen those in any park in my life, but in Hong Kong, boy, they were popular. And again, it made sense. It's culturally relevant to the market we serve, and we had to make sure we're looking at the business different than we were previously. So that was a real guidance for us. And so again, the Disney characters, they're relevant to Disney. They had no relevance to us. They're Western characters. So we had to focus on what was relevant for us in our market. And I often said to people, if you want an American theme park experience, go to Disney. They do it extremely well. If you want a Hong Kong theme park experience, come to Ocean Park. We'll give you that. Very culturally relevant. You'll feel really great. The streets are narrow. You're going to feel that intimacy that you may not feel at other parks. It's that mixing of East and West and chaos and order. But that was what we thought was the beauty of Ocean Park. It had that wonderful feel of Hong Kong, which we didn't want to lose in the redevelopment. So our whole mantra during the redevelopment was keep the best, improve the rest. And we went through and identified all the things we thought were the best elements. The next thing we looked at was control. I'm sure every one of you deal with this and live with it, but the first thing I said when I got to the park was, we have to control the controllable and keep things in perspective. We can't control the weather, but we can control the guest experience under bad weather. How do we do a better job of that? And then how do we keep things in perspective as well? So again, that was the key thing, looking at what we could control, how we do it, and making sure we keep our focus and energies where it should be. I think many of you have heard these terms before, but the key thing was control the controllable, keep things in perspective. The next thing was to lead. We had to lead. We had to take a leadership role if we were going to be different in the market, if we were going to focus on the things that we thought could make us stand out and really be successful in the shadow of Disney, because we knew Disney was coming with 100 times our marketing power and all their international influence. And we're just this little not-for-profit, government-owned, public trust sitting on the southern tip of Hong Kong Island. We were just, it was David Goliath at the highest possible levels. And so we thought, we got to lead. We got to lead with what we do well. Conservation, education, and entertainment are going to lead us. And so we started looking at the innate qualities of leaders. Everyone we hired, and this really came from the bottom up, but I got this originally. Has anyone ever heard of Warren Bennis? Might be a little dated. Warren Bennis was a leadership guru. He's no longer with us, but he was the leadership guru at the University of Southern California, USC. And this guy wrote, I think, 35 books. He was unbelievably dynamic in the world of leadership, writing, studying it, talking about it, and really producing good leadership analysis around the world. He has these great phrases that are out there as well. I had a chance to meet him back in the early 90s and had a chance to sit in a very small group of people. It was kind of funny because he had gone through and taken from a sign-up sheet people who were associated with family-run organizations, and he was interested in understanding the third-generation dynamic that occurs with family ownership. That's usually when a family will determine whether they stay in the business or they sell out. And he wanted to understand what was happening in that third generation. So I happened to work for Knott's Berry Farm at that time. They were in their third generation, and I was in this very small group. Somebody had asked him somewhere during the course of the presentation, Mr. Bennis, can you tell me, you've studied leadership, you've met every leader in the world. Are there innate qualities of leaders that you've discovered through these interviews? And he kind of let the question sit. And he said, you know, if I told you yes, you'd have no reason to be here. You'd have no reason to take my class, read my book, or see anything. And then he let that sit as everybody kind of chuckled. He says, but I can tell you yes. I found that there are innate traits. And I actually just kind of recorded these in my mind, and I've used them over the years, and we used them for our own leadership, promotion and development at Ocean Park. And I'm still using them as I move onward as well. But I want to walk you through these real quickly, just so you can see what we look for in the leaders that we are basically promoting or hiring at Ocean Park. Very quickly, though, curiosity. These aren't in priority order either, by the way. But curiosity. Every leader that Bennis met had an incredible sense of curiosity. It fed them. And they were always looking for how come and what and why. And he said he saw it time and time again with every leader he interviewed. Sense of responsibility dominated every leader that he said he met. Sense of humor. He said it was there. And it wasn't the person standing around telling joke after joke after joke and the room's just, uproariously laughing. It was more about knowing when to introduce a sense of humor. At the hardest moment in a company, when people are looking for an uplift, it was that ability to read it and know how to pick people up. And it was that sense of humor that he was really looking at. The other thing I probably should have told all of you is I've done this presentation before and people go, oh, I only have 5 of those. And I've often said to everybody, his point when he gave these was, you all have them. The question is, are you in an environment that allows it to come out of you? His point was, everybody's got these qualities, but sometimes they're suppressed. Sometimes you're just, your upbringing or your business environment may not allow these things to be expressed. But his point was the leaders he encountered had these, and they were able to express them. The next thing was passion. Every leader had passion. It seems kind of simple, but again, you'll see it or you'll not see it in people when they're leading an organization. The next thing was courage of conviction, being able to stick with something when you know it's right, see it through, even when you're getting rejected or getting resistance. The next thing was initiative, taking an initiative. Very important, I think, especially in all of our businesses as things move so quickly. Creativity and innovation. I'm probably talking to the core of that here in Hong Kong right now, but he saw it in every leader. They were creative, they were innovative. They knew how to approach a problem, or they at least had the creative kind of perspective of how to approach a problem or how to solve something. Sense of urgency. I don't know how many of you were always looking for this in your teams or looking for something, because everything's due yesterday. Everything's, nobody ever says, oh, you got a couple years to work on that. Don't worry, we'll come back to you. Everything is needed immediately. So again, how do you create that sense of urgency? How do you embody that as a leader? And then how do you get that from everybody? And so that was key as well. And then persistence. So every single leader he had a great persistence about how they approached their assignments, their work. And the last thing was confidence. And I'll talk more about this in a moment, because this emblem here, this 2 hands clasped, they're actually applauding. It's an award that's given in our industry, and it's called the Applause Award. And it's the highest recognition for excellence in theme park management and operation. Ocean Park won this back in 2012. It is the highest, it's the Oscars, it's the Nobel Prize in our industry, and people really get excited about it. We didn't get $1 million though, but we basically got the award. But the award was incredibly pride-inducing for the team because it meant something. We're the first park ever in Asia to receive it, and we entered an unbelievable grouping of parks that have received it in the past. It's awarded every other year. And so again, I use that with confidence because I often say confidence is not cockiness. It's not this overbearing, I keep coming back to the word cocky, but it's about being quietly confident. It's about the confidence that you just exude as a leader. And that's what Bennis was saying, is that real leaders exude a confidence in their trade, their craft, their profession, or what they do. And they don't need to be picked up. They don't need to constantly be, helped along the way. And he was saying that it's really a difference that he saw in the leaders that he was interviewing. And again, it was an innate trait that came out of these leaders. But that's the applause award. I'm very proud of the fact that Ocean Park won that. We hold that up very high whenever we talk about the park, and everybody wears a pin, and it's promoted at the park in many levels. But it also created a new standard for the park. We had to actually start realizing every guest coming in knew we were an applause award winner because we were putting it in their face. And so every guest letter I got afterwards was, "You call yourself the best? You got awarded this?" And I would then have to respond to that. So it raised the bar for us. Every day we opened the door after we won this, it created a whole new set of expectations of what we should be delivering. And so it was very important for us to be focused on that. The next thing was to be disruptive by nature. So I'm out of the leadership innate qualities now and talking about the next principle that we applied, be disruptive by nature. I was lucky enough to participate in an IBM survey about 7 years ago for CEOs around the world. And it was fun because we were using this term, but it actually came out of that survey that this is one of the key things of CEOs at that point in time. And I want to share a commercial with you to kind of punctuate this point of being disruptive. But we knew as a very small company with very few marketing dollars and very little resources to work with, to be in the same market as Disney, we're going to have to be more viral, more fleet of foot, more disruptive. Kind of like the Airbnbs or the Ubers, or you name the group that's out there now that's considered in that disruptive category. We had to do things differently. Let me share the commercial with you, and I'll talk about how this was disruptive in its own way.
Wow! Surprise!
Many happy fish， 走進深海 ，Go Go Go！Yeah Yeah Yeah！Happy fish， many happy fish， 玩到天黑又悠悠。
由海底伸到上海面，海洋公園大變身，夢幻水都1月27日隆重開幕。
This was huge back in 2011 when we introduced Aqua City. Aqua City was the largest single investment of the entire redevelopment plan at Ocean Park. We had a $5.55 billion redevelopment. Went over 6 years, 8 phases, and that particular piece was about $1.1 billion for Aqua City. So it was a big chunk of what we were doing. And to launch it, we needed to make sure we launched it in a way that really kind of disrupted the noise in the market, because we were changing everything about how you entered, how you exit, how long you stayed, what you did when you were at the park. It was dramatic. And for anyone who knows the old park and knows that now, it's a complete transformation of what used to be the entry point of the park. But that commercial was disruptive. We started with a viral campaign. It's pretty funny. We actually did something, you've probably all seen this. There's an old viral video out there where a guy is standing in front of the camera, and behind him is a body of water. And he talks about how they were studying the ability of animals or things to run across the surface of water. And he shows there's a human that comes running behind him and kind of just plop, 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 and then falls into the water. And he says, and we've learned over time, it's the speed at which you come, and it's the way you have your feet positioned. And so you see another guy come and get a little further, another guy come and go a little further, and eventually somebody runs all the way across the water. And it's suspending your disbelief. It's like, wow, this could be true. And of course, it's not true. But the point was, it got you looking and watching. And so we thought, why don't we do something similar? And so we did a viral video showing a spot out in Victoria Harbor, and it showed the water getting disrupted, a little whirlpool forming, and then the water separated. And we just left it there. And all of a sudden the comments started. And people were saying, hey, I know where that is. It's over here by the west end of Victoria Harbor, the east end of Victoria Harbor. I've seen that spot before. Somebody else wrote in, I know that phenomena. I've seen it happen before. It's when currents come together. We made it up. It was just complete CGI. But it's amazing what it got going in terms of discussion. And then we ran this commercial. And the commercial was meant to be a link to that, and then it connected to the park. That commercial ended up being the #1 most downloaded YouTube video or clicked on video for 3 months after the park opened. That was huge at the time. The song you heard, it was the #1 most downloaded ringtone for 6 months in Hong Kong. Again, we never anticipated that. It was a custom song. I could still on occasion be on the MTR or a bus going towards Ocean Park and I'll hear that song. And so somebody still has on their phone. It's probably an employee of Ocean Park, but the fact of the matter is that it really kind of took the market by storm and it got us incredible attention. And we went from 5.9 million people a year to 7.1 million people the following year when that area opened. It was huge. It was tectonic in terms of the shift that we felt. So again, it disrupted the market. It got Ocean Park even to the next plateau, over 7 million people visiting a year. And then of course, the next thing I wanted to look at was, we're a great company. We had to be genuine as well as generous. And I think that's a hard one, because I could sit around and talk all day long about all the things we do at the park. How many of you know that if it's your birthday and you're a Hong Kong resident, you get in for free at the park? I'm glad to see all those hands. Sometimes I see people say, I didn't know that. It's been going on for a long time. We started it back in 2005, and it was meant to be a give back to the community. And my assumption was, who's going to go alone to a theme park on their birthday? Would any of you? Oh, I saw a hand back there. The fact of the matter is most people wouldn't do that. They're going to bring a friend, they're going to bring family, they're going to bring paid admissions with 1 free admission. We knew we'd take those odds. About 3,000 people a week come in on their birthday for free during a whole week. It's very easy to absorb in the park. And it was really a great give back to the community. So that's generous, right? And it's, I guess you could say it's got a genuine aspect to it, but we had to be more than that. So really what Ocean Park focused on was its conservation education. So we have 13 different programs that allow local community to get into the park. If you're a senior citizen, you get in for free. If you're disabled, you get in for free. If you're a helper of a disabled person, you get in for half price. If you're carrying a CSSA card, you get in for $20, Hong Kong. The point is there's many, many ways to get into the park. They're generous. They give back to the community. We understand our CSR responsibility, and we try to do all we can to make sure Hong Kong people, at least once a year, can get in for free, and throughout the year can get in for very generous discounts. And so it was real key for us to do that. But beyond that, we set carbon care goals. We actually measured our carbon footprint and began setting targets and goals to achieve. Nobody had done that in our industry previous to that. And that was important for us to be genuine in who we are as a company and what we're doing as a company to reduce our carbon footprint. We didn't want to buy carbon credits. I hope I'm not offending anybody who does, but we just felt it was cheating. We felt that if we're going to set a target, we're going to achieve it. We're not going to borrow somebody else's and somehow say we've achieved our target. So it was key for us to make sure that what we did was genuine. $1 of every paid admission goes to conservation research at our Conservation Foundation. 5% of all of our sales of Panda products go to Panda Conservation. So there's a number of things we do. All of our 5% of our sales from our Tuxedo's restaurant goes to carbon care. Those were the genuine aspects that we could put back into what we were trying to do to support our mission, which is conservation and education, and ultimately entertainment as well. So that was the next thing. Just a few things. I've touched on this already. That's the IBM study I was involved with. I'm sure some of you own Toms or have bought Toms previously. I think you know the story behind them. Pretty important and impactful story. Same thing with Patagonia. If you own a Patagonia, you know that every time you buy a product, it goes back. That to me, those are genuine efforts, and people buy because of that many times from operations. We'd like to hope that some people come to our park because they know we're genuine and generous, back to what we do for our conservation education initiatives as well. And of course, the last thing is to aspire to expect. What we set out on when I first gave you that question, how many of you desire success? We set an aspirational goal. Over 6 years, 8 phases, $5.55 billion of investment, we actually ended up achieving everything we set out to do. We found ourselves shifting from an aspirational management style to an expectations-based management style. Our words of management changed. I'm going to share with you in a moment what I mean by that, by words. But the fact of the matter is that we began changing the way we looked at our KPIs and how we managed towards targets. We kind of removed the word hope from our vocabulary. I think all of you know hope is not a management concept or principle. So we had to start focusing not on desirable things, but on things we knew we could achieve. But what I am trying to say as well is companies go through these cycles. And Ocean Park has probably entered a new cycle of aspiration again. They achieved all their expected goals, and now they're kind of going back through that aspirational phase of becoming a resort. And a lot of work is going on to that regard. So let me ask you, how many of you expect success? Show of hands. No right or wrong answer here, again. But the fact is, if you've been on this journey, you'll know what I mean about shifting from aspirations-based language to expectations-based language. And I'm not saying one is better than the other. It's a cycle. Every company goes through it. Every leader goes through it. But we changed our mission statement based on this, or our vision statement. And we only changed one word. We changed aspire to will be. We could have said we are, because we won the applause award, we did all the things we had done, but we felt we needed to have something that was still somewhat prospective. And so, again, Ocean Park will be. Our vision is we will be the world leader in doing all these things we do, connecting people to nature. And that was key for us. Now, I won't take you through every one of these, but I talked about these words, aspirational and expectations-based words. So if you imagine for a moment you're setting a vision statement, and the aspiration state is going to be desire-based, whereas it's going to be belief-based under expectations. If you come down to, I don't know, let's see, journey, about, I don't know, midway down the page, the aspiration base of journey is uncertainty, whereas the expectation base is clarity. So you'll find that you're even writing your KPIs differently. You're setting up your goals differently. The words that you use for managing performance change and setting your goals. And this is the path we had been on. I created this, and I've been using it. In fact, there's a book coming out soon that'll actually touch more on this. But the goal is looking at businesses in terms of how they go through these cycles of aspirations to expectations. So if any of you are interested in this, I'm sure we can get it to you one way or another. But I'm happy to share whatever you like to work with. And then, of course, just a quick recap. I know I'm running long, but the things we looked at were understand, seek first to understand, then be understood. These are the principles of what I think made us successful. And when I talk about success, we've been profitable all the years, except for last year, unfortunately. But the fact of the matter is that we drove our revenues to such a level that we can live off of our cash reserves for multiple years. We've never needed a subsidy or grant from government. We've never been a burden to the taxpayers of Hong Kong. Every dollar that we use to develop the park, whether it's loaned from government or banks, is paid back with interest. I am, again, not bashing Disney, but if you notice, Disney doesn't pay back anything the government provides to them. They get a pretty nice ride, whereas this little not-for-profit sitting on the other side of the island has to pay every dollar back and beg for every penny, and we're still able to do it. When I do talk about success as well, we thought when Disney opened in 2005, we would be in a comfortable number 2 position, right? I mean, there's only 2 parks, we'd be number 2. We just assumed we'd be there for attendance and our position. Interestingly enough, 2005 came to an end. We were the number 1 park. Okay, fluke. 2006 came along, we were number 1 park again. Not only number 1 in Hong Kong, but number 1 in China, number 4 in Asia, number 13 in the world. 2007, 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, we beat Disney. Never heard of, never happened in any market in the world where anyone was beating Disney in attendance as well as in profit. And so it was really a great situation for us. And it was a 10-year run of unbelievable business. But I think all of us have felt this dip in tourism in Hong Kong in the last couple of years, and it's affecting us. But we're going to ride it out. The resort will convert, and you're going to see unbelievable things happen at the park, as well as Disney. They're opening up a brand new hotel at the end of this month. They've got more capital improvements going in. But again, it's about understanding. Next, it's value. Take a look at your values, your company values, and what you represent, what you stand for, what you want to be in the eyes of your customers and your staff. Then measure what's important to you, and then apply it against the metrics of your business. Plan, as I mentioned, remember to ACE. Anticipate, communicate, execute. It all starts with planning. Then relevance, be culturally relevant to the market you serve. Then lead. Take all that stuff you've done 1 through 5 and start applying it to your leadership approach. Then your controls. Make sure you control the controllable, keep things in perspective. Be disruptive by nature anytime you can. I'm sure all of you are dealing with small budgets and have bigger players in the market. How do you overwhelm them or overcome them? You got to be fleet of foot. You got to be more creative. You got to be innovative. You got to think differently. And then, of course, be generous, be genuine, not just generous. Let me reverse those words. That was a test for all of us. So be genuine, not just generous. And then, of course, from aspirations to expectations. And with that, I want to say thank you very much for allowing me to share the story with you.
Thank you so much, Tom. So Q&A. I'm sure there must be many questions. Anyone want to go first? Okay.
please. I'll keep that.
There you go.
Thanks, Tom.
Sure.
I just want to sort of try and understand. You talk about all those years that you were successful with against Disney and being sort of the global dominance that they are. What do you put this small little fish in the south side of Hong Kong to the small little mouse on the north side of Lantau to? Do you contribute anything to that success?
Over the years, what I've talked about is we had a benefit here in Hong Kong of being the first to exist. Disney was coming in. I think Disney let me put this differently. I think they overestimated the knowledge of their product and the connection to their IP coming to Hong Kong. And I think what they disregarded, and I'll tell you, if you're ever in a competitive state, the best thing you can ever hope for is that your competitor disregards you. And Disney disregarded us. They just, it's a tired, old, horrible park. We don't have to worry about it. It was a great place to be because we quietly just kind of sowed the seeds and built the park that we did, and they kept dismissing us. And so I think the fact was we existed in the market. We had what I call generational value. And so what that meant was people who came as kids now brought their kids. We were already inculcated in the culture of the community. People in southern China already knew who we were. So we had that benefit of knowledge and awareness already established, and we just worked upon that. And I think it really helped us already have the local base. But I got to tell you, I think what really helped us was Disney really misstepped out of the gate. If any of you were here in 2005 when they opened, they had horrible issues in terms of PR. They were making everything go back to Burbank in terms of their PR statements. And so what happened was it was going back overnight to California while the news was trying to generate a story. And we all know this. If you know the Hong Kong media, there's 18 different print media outlets here in Hong Kong. There aren't enough people, 7 million people on 18 media outlets. There aren't enough people in news things happening for 18 papers to be filled every day. So you got to make it up, right? Don't let the facts get in the way of a great story. And so Disney wasn't responding quickly enough, and the media were running with stories. And it was hurting their reputation. It was hurting their image. They weren't getting the word ahead of the news. And so they started getting a reputational hit. And what happened was the market said, I don't want to really go there. They got to work out their bugs. They got to work out their issues. And they started retreating, if you will, or coming back to Ocean Park. And I was actually impressed by it because we didn't plan on that. We didn't expect that Disney would stumble out of the gate. And if any of you were here for the Chinese New Year of 05, 06, that February of 06, that was a horrible moment for them because they had babies being handed over the fence. They closed their gates, and it just became this incredible worldwide image of you can't get into Disney even if you have a ticket. And they dropped 1 million people between 2005 and 2006 in attendance. It was horrible. I think those things, plus our own ability to be connected to the market, culturally relevant to our markets, and doing the things we did very well is what allowed us to achieve what we did. And what we also found too was parents, generally speaking, were not as interested in a fantasy experience for their kids. They were more interested in an educational experience, and we offered that. And that came out of focus groups we were having, that people actually preferred Ocean Park because they felt it had more things they could do for the whole family, whereas Disney was really more oriented towards very young kids and predominantly girls before they bought Marvel. And so we were actually finding ourselves positioned product-wise and market-wise better than them for the whole family. And I think all those things added to us doing well.
You just touched on something relevant. Would it be unfair to say that Disney's not relevant in this market in terms of success? I
think they're becoming relevant. And again, honestly, we wouldn't be where we are. We wouldn't have done what we did if it weren't for them coming. I thank them every day. In the book that's being written, I'm thanking Disney for coming to Hong Kong because it allowed us to do something. A market that used to get 3 million visitors to a theme park back in 2004, today does over 13 million visitors to theme parks, almost 14 million. So they brought the market up and they made us be better at our game. But I think if any of you, I don't know how many of you follow Disney, when they ran their very first commercial, it was a classic mistake, I think, in marketing. Their very first commercial here in Hong Kong was a little girl who was walking through the park with a red Mickey balloon. And she's walking through the park and pretty soon the balloon's lost. And then I think Goofy or one of the characters came along and gave her a new balloon, and that ended the commercial. Now, in the States, people who are fanatical about Disney, they've been raised on Disney, they're going to go, oh, that feels so good. Here they went, huh? What? So I lose my balloon and some puppet gives me they didn't make the connection. There was no emotional connection, yet they thought they already had the emotional connection. They went straight to emotional marketing versus call to action marketing. And I think the thing they should have done very day one was call to action and educational marketing to inform the market of who they are. And after that, they went back and did that. They did a lot of testimonial commercials. They dropped that emotional commercial. Then they actually set up where it is today, the Art of Animation. They actually had kind of an indoctrination center there for all the groups that were coming in to actually learn about Disney before they went into the park, because they weren't making the connection. They knew Disney as a cartoon, they knew Disney as a bed sheet or a thermos. They didn't know Disney as a theme park offering. And so they've gotten over that hump now, and I think Shanghai is going through a bit of the same learning curve as well, but they're better prepared. But I think it was more of that to answer your question.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? One up here.
Hi, Tom.
Hi.
What do you think of being number one in Asia? What do you anticipate? What do you plan? What do you expect?
It's tough. You know, I love being in that second position. I've kind of been there all my life in my career. I've been in the business for 40 years. I worked at Knott's Berry Farm, which was number 2 to Disney in California. I went to Madrid, well, actually I went a number of places, but we were always kind of sitting in that number 2 position. I kind of like that because you're always shooting for number 1. Being at number 1 is tough because you got to sustain that every single day. And I think that's the trick, right? Is how do you sustain that every day? Sustain leadership, sustain principles. You have to keep reinventing yourself. And again, I think it's a tenuous place to be, because you're held in a higher regard and people actually challenge you every day in terms of whether you really are number 1. You're as good as you say you are. And I used to write a lot of thank you notes to my employees, but I'd also see every guest complaint. And as I mentioned earlier, the guest complaints used to come in as well. We got them, but they weren't nearly as heavy as the compliments were. So it kind of made it feel good. When I first got to the park, the compliments were real low and the complaints were real high. And so I think, I don't know, I'm dating myself here, but I think in 2015, if I remember right, we had about 2,400 compliments. And we probably had about, 200 complaints. Whereas when I got to the company, I'd say that the complaints were somewhere in the 1,200 range, and the compliments were probably, my assistant's here, but I think we had like maybe 100, 200. And I actually asked Wendy because when I got to the company, I said, can you bring me all the compliments? And so she brought me a stack. And actually, it was 24. Now that I think about it, it was 24 compliments. I said, "Was this for the week?" No. Is it for the month? No. Is it for the quarter? No, it's for the year. We had 24 compliments in that first year. And I thought, that's okay. I'll write a thank you note to each one of them. I wrote a personal thank you note, thanked them specifically for what they did. And over the course of time, it went from 24 to 2,400 that I hand wrote, most of them. And in fact, Wendy asked me one day if she wanted me she could write them up for me and I'd just sign them. And I thought, I don't know if I can do that, because one of the employees came to me one time, and in a bag, she was leaving the park and she kept waving to me. She had some girlfriends with her. She didn't speak English, I didn't speak Cantonese, and so it was going to be a lot of body language. But she came up to me and she pulled out of her bag a laminated thank you note. And she wanted me to see she carries it with her. And I thought, wow, that's powerful. I got to keep writing these because it meant something to her. And I felt that I would lose the meaning if it wasn't handwritten, if it wasn't specifically personalized to them. So I wrote a lot of thank you notes. Every night, every weekend, I would package them up and I'd be writing thank you notes. But I thought it was meaningful and it showed a commitment from my part to the employee for what they do. And so again, I got a long way off your question, but I think it was all about those things that, that's how you stay number 1. And that's what you think about every day, is you got to recognize the people who make you number 1, and you've got to support the team that makes it possible. Thank you. Anyone else? Got some other questions here?
Hi, Tom.
Hi.
What's your advice on overcoming the feeling of being really overwhelmed when you've got such big tasks? Do you have like a general process or method?
What I usually would come back to is control the controllable and keep things in perspective. I'd probably make a list of all the things I feel that are putting pressure on me and take a look at which ones are most important and controllable and which ones I need to put in perspective because they won't make a difference in terms of what we're going to do. And that's typically, we did the same thing for Ocean Park. It was an overwhelming outlook of what are we going to do? Where are we going to invest that first dollar? Where are we going to put the first efforts of design? How are we going to start to move the market? But systematically, we went through and said, okay, what is it that makes us different? What is it that were our core values? What are our guiding principles? With those in place, then what do we want to do that's going to be differential to Disney that allows us to market and stand out? And it was really just a very methodical process of really identifying what we can control and keeping the things we can't in perspective.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good to see you, Tom.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm Stephen. And I think you mentioned about the substantial leadership, and you talk about the 10-minute leadership style. How do you see the moving forward, the new trend, or moving forward on the authentic leadership? Because what I kind of see and aspired, from you on the previous talk, and I kind of see that you kind of find your true north. So how do you inspire the audience here to move to the next level of leadership?
Wow, that's an interesting question. For me, I guess a lot of it is recognizing mistakes, recognizing failures, because you're only going to advance or grow if you're willing to recognize that wasn't so great. And I've certainly had a lot of those things. I mean, I'll give you an example. When we knew Disney was coming, we were afraid that they were going to be basically taking all of our employees, because where else are they going to find theme park trained employees but Ocean Park? So we had this fear that we're going to lose half of our employees, and it happened at a time where we only had about $100 million Hong Kong in cash reserve, about 3 months to cover business, which is not good in our business. And we had a lot of people who were thinking and talking that Ocean Park was on its last legs. And so the motivation would have been there to go someplace new. All that was in place. And so I came up with an idea. Why don't we do what companies who have merged or have been acquired do, put a stick-around bonus in place to get people to stay through that period of time of transition for Disney's opening. And we identified about 200 employees we thought were critical to our mission that we didn't want to lose. And so we identified this plan, we put together a proposal, we identified what they get. And I really thought, in my heart of hearts, this is right, this is a good thing to do. I missed the more fundamental aspect that the board woke me up to, is when I brought it to the board, did two things wrong. Put the paper out to the board without doing any lobbying to introduce the idea, even to my chairman, Alan Zeman. So the very first call I got, I think the papers went out Friday, the very first call I got Saturday morning was from my chairman saying, what are you doing? What's this all about? And I started getting call after call from the deputy chairman and other board members saying, what are you doing? And when I got to the board meeting and I presented the paper, it was shot down. And it was a humbling moment for me because I realized I'd missed the most fundamental thing in that process. I was thinking about, preserving the staff. What I missed was I had a deeply committed staff that didn't need to be preserved. We just needed to keep being good leaders and good managers for them. Because if we isolated 200 and incentivized them, how long do you think that would have stayed a secret? Maybe a second. The moment the first guy walked out of the room, he would have said, whoo, I'm staying. And they're giving me. And everybody else goes, not me. What's going on there? So the board woke me up to the fact, to something I should have known fundamentally, is that you can't do that. You can't isolate it. And so we didn't do it. In fact, the board challenged me, go back and find another way to do this. And we actually went back and did an engagement survey to find out how engaged the employees were. So I think to answer your question without going too anecdotal here is, I think it's about really admitting when you make a mistake. That's how you always progress, I think, and then learning from that and applying a new approach. So I would say no matter how far we get ahead with technology or whatever it may be, or trends, it still comes down to the basics of being authentic and who you are, representing your mistakes when you make them, taking ownership, and then moving to the next stage of improvement.
Yes, thank you, Tom. I think that's your crucible moment.
Yeah.
And that can make your impact. Just to let you know, I'm a ex-cast member at Disney.
Yeah.
So the stuff that you mentioned, it does resonate as well. And the first time they're not relevant, but now, of course, they are catching up to be relevant to the more.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I know there's some more questions off here to the side.
Hello, Tom.
Hello.
Actually, I've been a Disney cast part-time staff before. But really, actually, I'm born in Hong Kong, and I start to go to Ocean Park maybe 10 years old, and then I always think it's a local traditional theme park. And but it's very interesting is I can see many animals there. Okay, but in a few years ago, then I heard from news the Ocean Park is one of the top theme park in the world. I'm proud of it. as a Hong Kong people. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay. Because Hong Kong is very just a very small spot in the world, but this theme park is talking about top 10. Maybe you're talking about top 13, right? But I'm talking about it should be the top 10 in the world, some media, okay. And I'm from in my past 18 years. I'm always in accounting and finance control field. But see, this year I'm transformed to business development and sales marketing. Now here's my question, okay? And actually I want to know more about for marketing. Now it's changing the focus from offline and outdoor to digital. I know a lot of firms, they just change the portion of their marketing spending, like from 50 to 50. Now, like very big one, cosmetic group, they really transfer to reapportion to 100% digital marketing. Okay, but it's extreme.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
but it's very big one. The cosmetic group is based in the Gateway, Team Sergeant. And then, I just want to know, you say that Ocean Park spend very little on the marketing. I want to know the marketing, is you're using in-house or you're outsourcing it like this?
Okay. I'll answer your question, maybe give you a little bit broader response as well. Our marketing is actually outsourced. We have a very small kind of boutique advertising agency. We have a large PR group now. It used to be a very small boutique PR group as well. But the intention is that we are going to outside services, but we play a very key role in that creative process. So usually when we're developing an advertising campaign, we've probably got the idea already formed, and what we're asking the ad agency is to help us execute it. And so it's a bit of a partnership. And I think that has to be that way in any company, that you can't just say to the ad agency, give us something really great. I know it happens, but we always felt we're the owners of this product. We have to give them a brief that is really oriented towards where we want to go and see if they can help us in terms of the execution. But on the digital side, I can tell you, in fact, I'll give you a quick anecdote as well, but we're shifting, as everybody is, more towards digital. But I think whenever you talk to the media buying agencies, when you talk to the ad agencies, they'll still tell you that terrestrial TV is still the broadest reach. If you're just looking for reach, you're just making noise, you want to touch as many people as possible. What digital's given us is that ability, if your business analytics are good, it gives you that ability to target specifically who you want to talk to. And I think that's the key to digital now, is instead of doing just broad announcements, you use your business analytics, determine the market you want. Let's say you want to get 25 to 35-year-olds who make over $50,000 a month, or whatever that number is, and that's who you want to go after, then you can pinpoint them through the digital processes that you're putting in place. And that's been great, because now I can actually go into China and I can say I got 8 key markets that have the propensity to travel, they have the discretionary income, they have the age group I'm looking for, and they have the lifestyle that supports travel, and they're most highly kind of they're most interested in Hong Kong. We know all that through the business analytics and the digital information we have, so that we can pinpoint a campaign just to those cities, just to those people, just to those folks. That's the beauty, I think, of digital now, is you can make your money spend better and hit the targets you want without just a broad kind of message out there. But we still, I still say we, Ocean Park still uses terrestrial when they want to get a broad message out to the market, because it's the easiest way through regular TV to catch as many people as possible and have as many impressions as you want. But if I want to call to action, many times I'm going to go more to a digital campaign. And the anecdotal piece of that was, and this is a little bit dated, but one year we had a Halloween commercial. I don't know how many of you have been to our Halloween bash. It's the biggest in the world, by the way. The most attended in the world over the last 15 years that it's been run. But interestingly enough, one year we did a commercial, and it was very local, very colloquial, and it was 3 girls on a school bus holding their school bags, very cramped, And one of the girls got sick and she opened the bag of her friend and vomited in the bag. Very Halloween, right? Where else does that happen? Well, the girl then opens her bag to look in there and there's a ghost head in her bag looking back up at her, kind of puckering, like kissing her. And we thought, oh, great commercial. And the message behind it was something about Halloween. It was all in colloquial Cantonese as well. So it was actually meant specifically for our local market. And we took it to the Tela, because everything has to be approved, and Tela said, that's too scary. You can't put that on air. What are we gonna do? YouTube was just opening up, and we thought, well, no one's monitoring social media. We put it on YouTube. It was unbelievable. It was a viral hit because it went exactly after the market we wanted, kids at that time who were really into the YouTube and into viral marketing and into those things that were making noise. So it actually was the best thing that ever happened to us. We thought we'd go terrestrial. We actually went digital in a format that was brand new with YouTube several years ago, and it actually dominated that year, and it got us the attendance we wanted from the market we wanted. So in a bit of a mistake, not a mistake, I guess, in a bit of a, you can't do this, we found another way to do it cheap, no real expense whatsoever, other than the production value of that commercial, but it got us to the digital format that we realized this is where we need to be. And so it gave us a huge lift. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, can I have another one?
Sure.
Now, Ocean Park is number one in Hong Kong. Do you have a dream Ocean Park be the number one in the world?
The easy answer is yes. I aspire to that. I don't expect it yet. There's a lot that has to happen. I think we have a very limited ability to operate outside of Hong Kong. For those who don't know this, there's an ordinance in place. The ordinance says we're not for profit, we're a public trust, we're wholly owned by the government. We can only operate on Brick Hill in Aberdeen. In order to be number one in the world, we'd have to be able to expand ourselves and take on maybe some of these 70% of the Chinese parks that are failing and start getting our brand and our name out there. So we'd have to change the ordinance. And the ordinance changing process in Hong Kong under the current political environment is not an easy process. And so we've talked about it for years, and I think a day will come where we'll change the ordinance and we'll be able to then take Ocean Park abroad, and then that's the day I think we can set that target and start expecting to be number one in time. But it's going to require a good IP. We think we've got a good one about to roll out that has potential. We're going to actually roll it digitally because we don't have the money to do it terrestrially. So we're going to be doing something that will be very much like digital shorts that will go out to kids and become part of our education messaging. So we're finding another way into the back door to be able to achieve that, but it'll be the step in the direction of becoming even more important in the world than we are just here in Hong Kong.
Yes. I think we can open another Ocean Park, one in Korea,
yeah,
and one in India.
There you go. Good markets. I think there was a question behind you, if you don't mind. I guess that'll probably have to be the last, maybe, or can we keep going?
Last
okay.
one,
All right.
Hi, Tom.
Hi there.
I think that was actually a question I wanted to ask you. I've been in Hong Kong for 3 years. We set up an accounting firm here in Hong Kong. 3 years later, we're in Singapore. It's all about having good people, having a good idea, a good premise, having good people, and building something around that. And I think one of the things I was just thinking of is you're talking about Disney and being a global brand, Universal as well. My question was going to be, how do you see Ocean Park expanding beyond Hong Kong, which you just answered? So I think one of the things is, in terms of the business, the people, the brand, I really wanted to sort of find out what your vision was. Anything that starts in Hong Kong tends to expand out of Hong Kong. So my question to you was, where would you like Ocean Park to be next? And where do you see the next markets, the next opportunities? Where do you see Ocean Park in maybe 10 years, 20 years, 30 years time?
You know, I think the natural place for us to be is China. I think it's almost like it has to be because there's opportunity. If any of you are following the China market, I'm sure you are. There's like 300 million people today that are considered middle class, and that's expected to go to 600 million by 2020. That's an amazing growth. That's more people with discretionary money, discretionary time, and that's what happens when theme parks grow. And the reason there's 2,800 theme parks right now in China, which is more per capita than any place else in the world, is the people who are developing them understood we've got a growing market that's going to need this recreational opportunity. In China, they're called cultural offerings. You don't hear them referred to as theme parks very often. And I think up to this point, it's been a land play because government said if you can bring a cultural offering to the table, we'll give you a whole bunch of land real cheap. And so you've had a lot of players coming in who really wanted the land, but knew the way in to get cheap land was to say, I got a cultural offering. And so they said, I got a cultural offering. Well, what is it? Oh, it's a theme park, all based on blah, blah, blah. Oh, great. Well, how big is it? Well, how much land do you need? I need 10,000 hectares. Great. How big is the park going to be? It's going to be 100 hectares. Okay, what's the other 9,000? Well, it's going to be for residential and business and commercial. And the fact of the matter is that I think a lot of the parks that have opened have been a lost leader to get what they really wanted, which was the land around it. And I think that's going to be changing. And I think that's where Ocean Park will be in the future. It's just a matter of time. There's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of really poorly operated marine park and animal-based parks in China. And I think that's the next big wave that I'm hoping for, is that we can bring a brand of humane, responsible animal care, animal presentation, education, conservation-based theme, if you will, offerings to that market. We're not seeing it anywhere. Chimlong is, if any of you have been to Chimlong in Zhuhai, they probably have taken the biggest effort in that direction. But behind the scenes, it's not as pristine as it may seem on the surface. There's a lot of things still that are happening in terms of how animals are acquired, how they're cared for, if they die, how is it reported? Is there any transparency? If you know Ocean Park, we're absolutely transparent. Everything we do is audited, it's presented. We have a 24-hour time limit to report any animal death. Deaths do happen. Unfortunately, they do happen. I wish every animal lived forever. But I've often had to tell the media, no human lives forever. Every day, if you stood at any one of these hospitals, you could report the deaths in births. We're no different. We're a living, breathing organism. Our goal is not to have any irresponsible deaths, not to have anything that was a failing on the part of a caregiver. But the fact of the matter is in China, there's a lot of opportunity yet, I think, to move that pendulum in a more humane-based way towards how to present and care for animals. And there's people beginning to talk about it, which is great. But I had a discussion one time with a journalist in Beijing when we were presenting our park, and I was talking about this very passionately about what I think we can do and how we can help. And then this person very bluntly said to me, well, when you know where human rights sit, where do you think animal rights sit? Here. Okay, good point. Now, again, that was his point of view. Others may disagree with that, but I kind of got the picture that he felt animal rights is not going to rise to a level of real importance for a period yet. But what I do find in China is things are moving at light speed. So what may have taken 50 years in the US or in Europe seems to happen in 5 to 10 years in China. And so I think that voice of the animal rights activists, that voice of the humane treatment of animals is reaching China and moving quickly. And we feel very obligated to that and feel that we deliver on those humane requests, but we still have our own objectors here in Hong Kong, people who say, I don't believe in it. Some people say, my son, or I'm sorry, I had one guest write to me one time and say, I never saw a dinosaur, therefore my child never needs to see a dolphin. It's like, I can't respond to that. It's like, you're right. And again, if you're that diametrically opposed to this, then we probably are never going to agree. So can we agree to disagree? But we believe we're reaching people who otherwise would never learn about these animals. We're doing it in a humane way. But again, there's always that sensitive spot there. It's an emotional topic. But I think we have opportunity in China to answer your initial question. So sorry for departing on that.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you.